Hey guys, today we are doing another Q&A and I hope to answer as many of your questions as I can. Now that being said, in my last video, I asked you guys if you would have any interest at all in a podcast. The response was unanimously positive. Thank you very much. It might be linked below. Let's get into the Q&A. Our first question for the day is, how hard is it to start living in Japan? Rather, how did you find it? Thanks for the question, Sam. Honestly, it's about as hard as you make it. You're gonna get this type of answer from me quite a bit, but Japan is quite similar to pretty much any other country. The language barriers and everything aside, it's a place with people. I personally found it quite easy to move to Japan, especially when you first get to Japan. Japanese people love hosting guests. They love having visitors. They love foreigners coming into the country. So that being said, especially when you first get here, that first 6 months, that first year, it is super easy to live here because everyone wants to get to know you. Everyone wants to be your friend. I hope that answers that one. Alright, I think the next question lines up with the last question quite nicely. So it's from Rando. Hey Rando, and he says, hey yo, I guess I'm interested in how it was when you first arrived in Japan. How good were your Japanese skills? How did people react to your language skills? That's a good question. Are they understanding and supporting of foreigners who try to communicate in their language? That is a beautiful question. When I first arrived in Japan, I had basic conversational Japanese. Back in Canada, I was surrounded with Japanese people and I was using Japanese on nearly a daily basis. My Japanese was not perfect, and actually, my first vacation to Japan, I spoke almost no Japanese. I found myself up in Sapporo in Hokkaido. I was lost, I needed a place to stay, and I was trying to find a hotel, and I walked around to people asking in a mix of English and really bad Japanese, and they were so nice. That being said, flash forward to today, 2017. My Japanese is absolutely fine. I use Japanese on a daily basis in a wide variety of situations, but Japanese is kind of like karate. You learn it so that you never have to use it. Charlotte and I were just talking about this the other day, and it's come to the point where here in Tokyo, you don't really need Japanese. Tokyo has become so foreigner friendly that almost everywhere you go, there's going to be guides in English, Spanish, and a wide variety of languages. Train announcements. Most of the trains coming to and from the airports have announcements in 3 or 4 different languages, with the display in other languages as well. And yeah, that being said, Japanese people are very interested in people from other countries and their languages. So no matter what country you're from or what language you speak, there's definitely going to be somebody here who's into it. I like that question. Alright, next one. Hamey asks, what's your favorite season in Japan? I have one very distinct favorite season for a variety of reasons, and that is spring. Obviously I love the sakura, but there's just something about spring in Japan, the way the air feels, the smell of everything, the fact that the darkness of winter is gone, the daylight time is starting to get longer and longer. Japan doesn't have daylight savings time, so in the winter it gets dark really early. It starts getting a little dark around 4, by 4:30 it's pretty dark, at least in Tokyo. Southern Japan, they get a little more daylight than we do. But just coming into spring and having not only the cherry blossoms, but you get people starting new jobs. You get the atmosphere of fresh new life in spring. I absolutely love the feeling of spring in Japan. A lot of people come to Japan hoping to catch the cherry blossoms in spring, and it's very tough. You might only get 2 or 3 days of full bloom, and if you miss the cherry blossoms, my message to you is that's okay. Just feel Japan in the spring and enjoy that. Spring. Alright, next question, I'm gonna put it up right here. How did you start learning Japanese? Also, any advice for learning Japanese by yourself? Yes, I might even do an entire video on that. I started learning Japanese back in high school. One of my high school teachers had this little red dictionary. I'll see if I can show it to you guys. This is it, right here. There we go, that dictionary. He told me, you know what? You're good at picking up skills. Why not learn another language? Try Japanese. And I was like, who speaks Japanese? And he looks at me and he says, I do. I was so shocked that I was like, okay, I'll take the challenge. I decided to use that little red dictionary to learn some hiragana and katakana, some of the writing, and pick up a couple vocabulary. But it wasn't until I got into university and ended up surrounded by the Japanese community, which I somehow integrated myself into, that I found myself using Japanese on a near daily basis. As for some tips, my number one tip for learning Japanese or any other language is don't take breaks. A little bit every single day. The first day that you take a break from learning Japanese is the day that your progress is set back. There are so many fantastic tools out there now to learn Japanese. There are apps and online sites that were not available when I started learning. I went directly to kids' books so I could learn reading and writing. But now there are so many apps, there are podcasts, you name it. The main point being, don't take a break. Do something every single day. Get a little Japanese in your life every day and build on that progress. Don't be in a rush. You'll get it. Thank you for the question. It's a moderately windy spot here. We're going to answer the next one, which is two small questions. Have you ever lived in countries besides Canada and Japan? And do you speak French? First question, no. I've never lived, I've done extended stays in the United States, Pennsylvania for a while, and I've spent some time down in Georgia, but it was more just like a long vacation than it was me living there. Canada and Japan, that's pretty much it for me. Canada, US, and Japan, that is all I have traveled to. I did plan on traveling to more places, but I came to Japan for the first time and just got so hooked on it that I felt I didn't have enough time for anywhere else. Second question, do you speak French? Just a little bit. I used to be really good at French. I won the French award in school, like, all the time. And then I learned Japanese and completely forgot the French. The next question being from Paul, which is, could you tell me what to expect in March in Tokyo? Is there lots of tourists still? Is the food good or any festivals? And is it cold? March is a tricky month. It really depends on the year as to whether or not it's going to be cold. It's usually not too bad, depending on the country that you're coming from. Japan is generally comparatively warm. Even in the winter, it usually only goes below zero, maybe 2 times. March is not the busiest month in terms of festivals and everything like that, but March and April is right around the time that the sakura come out, and March is most definitely spring. So if you get a good March and the weather's nice, and it's not too windy, you don't have too much rain, March can be a beautiful month. If I had to redo my first ever Japan trip, I probably would have came end of March, beginning of April, knowing what I know now about just how beautiful Tokyo is during that time. As for festivals and whatnot, you know, I'm just gonna give you the answer. Like, I totally could have Googled this, but you could all. There's not as many festivals. Festival season tends to kick off from about May, and you get a lot of the fireworks and whatnot in the summer, like July, August, and whatnot. So, thanks for the question, Paul. All right, next one is from Diana, and it is, where in Canada are you from? Has your family ever come out to visit you? I am from Ontario. I was originally born in Toronto, big city, and moved a little bit outside of Toronto and was pretty much raised there. As for has my family come to visit me? Yes, they have. Not only has my family come out to visit me, I come from a very big family. In my family, I'm not even gonna get into the numbers. Let's just say I have a lot more brothers and sisters than most people do. It's a lot, like a lot. Not only have almost all of them come out to visit me at one point or another, but I've also had a lot of friends come out to visit me since getting here. In fact, just this year, I don't even know how many friends I've met up with. I've met up with at least 5 or 6 friends from Canada just this year. You know, today started out so beautifully, but but it is starting to get windy out here. Woo. All right, next one posted right up here is, how much do you think I should budget a day? That is a tough question. Okay, interesting fact, when I first came to Japan, my budget was 1,000 yen a day. 10 bucks. 10 bucks. 1,000 yen. It was very, very tight. That included my transportation, that included my food, my entertainment, everything. I do not recommend going as low as $10 because it really limits what you can do. But in a pinch, you can definitely survive. It really depends on how much stuff you want to do. If you're looking to go for a low budget, I say do your research. If you want to enjoy Tokyo or Japan on a low budget, doing your research on transportation, activities, and everything else is going to be a lifesaver. If you're not so much into the research and you have a little more money to spend, just go wild. You can't really go wrong. That being said, I think I'm going to do a video just based on that. This wind is killing me. Whew, I will tell you, 2 back-to-back telephone meetings can eat up a lot of time. All right, let's get back to this Q&A. All right, so for the next question, where do you recommend a person from the US visiting Japan for the first time stay and visit? That is an impossible question, but I will try. It really depends on what you like. Like, what about Japan appeals to you? Do you like the countryside of things? Do you like that traditional small town? Do you like the big city? If you like the cityscape of Japan, I recommend definitely Tokyo, maybe Osaka. If you're more into the quiet countryside Japan, I recommend hitting up somewhere like in Shikoku, like Matsuyama. If you haven't seen any of my Shikoku videos, I will link my favorite one right here. If you're centered in Tokyo, there are a whole list of day trips that you can do. It's a really tough question. You cannot go wrong, especially if it's your first time in Japan. Just come and have fun. I know it's a terrible answer. I'm sorry, but I really believe it. There's no wrong answer when it comes. This wind is unruly. Let's get going. I got one here from Laxative Pain talking about, I've highlighted several artists. What does it take to make it as an artist here in Tokyo? Is it a competitive place? You know what I think, honestly, the landscape doesn't really change that much when it comes to art in Tokyo versus art in North America. You gotta be willing to A, network, B, put in the work, and C, just keep doing it. You've gotta be creative. Yes, it's gonna be competitive. The entire world is a competitive system when it comes to art, and I believe that here in Japan, it is no different. Sure, you may have a slightly competitive edge in some ways because, hey, you're not from here, so what you're doing may come across unique. Same as when I play shamisen. Honestly, if I were to sit down on the street and play shamisen beside a Japanese shamisen player, I get more money. It's unfair, but they like the novelty of a foreigner who's playing the shamisen, but at the exact same time, other doors may be more challenging to open for things like language barriers or cultural stereotypes. It doesn't matter where you go, what country in the world. I watched my friend Frankie work for years and years and years before she got any recognition, and she's a good artist. Now that girl is exploding and doing art everywhere. All right. Let's jump into the big loaded question of today, okay? I'm gonna put this one right here. This one is, have you ever experienced discrimination for being a foreigner? Do people stare at you when you walk down the street? Are they surprised when they hear you speak Japanese? So first I'm going to answer this one, and then we're going to talk about the topic of racism or discrimination in general, because it's a very important topic. The answer to this question is going to vary greatly depending on the person and their perspective, and that's one of the things that I want to put in here. This question, I'm going to try to give a brief answer right now, and I will go into more detail in the podcast. I'm going to leave a link to that below, so if it's a topic that you're interested in, check it out in the podcast. That being said, as I approach this topic, I want to make one thing really clear. In my personal opinion, and this is all my opinion, racism, discrimination, and everything is all in the eyes of the beholder, okay? I feel that it is very subjective and it feels different from person to person. While one person may just smile and be like, oh, that's cool if a Japanese person says, hey, you're really good at using chopsticks. Another person may be wildly offended by that. In the same way that walking up to someone and saying, hey, you look really nice today, can get the reaction of, oh, thank you, in one person, and what, do I not usually look nice? In another person. When I first came here, I didn't really notice that much discrimination. You get people who come here and they feel there are these things called microaggressions, which are these tiny little things like the comment about the chopsticks, that it's slightly passive-aggressive racism. Honestly, I don't really feel that that's the way to go. So as for discrimination, I've said it 1,000 times and I think I'll say it 1,000 more. Japan is a country just like any other. And it's people just like any other. There's going to be people who know how to interact with you and there's going to be people who don't. That'll happen in your own home country too. People stare at you when you walk down the street. Me with the beard, a little more. Back when I didn't have the beard, not as much. It doesn't bother me. When I skateboard down the street, because there's not a lot of skateboarders here in Japan, I'm not really a skateboarder, but I use a skateboard for transportation. But when I skateboard down the street, I do get people looking at me. Why? Because it's rare. It stands out. It's something that you wouldn't normally see. If you saw a person on a funny bicycle, you'd probably look. So yeah, that being said, you know, when I first came to Japan, foreigners, English speakers, non-Japanese were a lot more rare, and they're still a lot more rare in the countryside. So if I got on a train then, it wouldn't be uncommon to have people stare at me. There's a simple solution to this, a very simple solution. Just smile at them. If you smile at them, one of two things is generally going to happen. They're going to smile back, or they're going to stop looking. Easy peasy, done and dealt with. There's a pro tip for you. If you feel you're being stared at, just smile at them. It makes your day better, might even make their day better. Are they surprised when they hear you speak Japanese? You get that sometimes, yeah. You know, the Japanese language was a language that was originally designed to kind of keep foreigners out. And Japan was a country that was closed for 200 years, and the language was designed to be a system understood only by the Japanese. That's something I will go into in a whole different video. So that being said, when a non-Japanese speaker speaks Japanese, they may be surprised, they may be impressed, they may be indifferent. I've gotten the whole range of reactions from, oh wow, your Japanese is really good, to, hey, are you half? To absolutely no reaction at all. Now that that's done, I want to talk about that key bit, because this all points towards discrimination and racism in Japan. So it brings to the, is Japan a racist country? As I said at the beginning, this is very subjective, okay? And there's gonna be a really easy way to answer this question for you. I'm gonna ask you a question right now. Do you feel people in your home country are racist? If in answering that question in your head, you went to one of the extremes right away, yes, definitely, or no, not at all, you may potentially find some trouble here in Japan. I find that people who already have that, yeah, you know, people in my country are racist, you know what? You're gonna find racism anywhere then. And you may feel that way coming to Japan. If you're like, no, not at all, then you may be like, hey, Japan is fine. Or you may be like, oh, this is really different from what I'm used to in my country. I'm not used to getting stared at. Is this racism? You may feel this huge gap. If you were stuck somewhere in the middle, you may not find Japan that racist at all. Now again, all of this is just my opinion. You could be on either spectrum or right in the middle and come to Japan and find that it is not a racist country. The point that I want to drive home with this is it's really about how you feel about it. As I said, I'm going to go into that question in a little more detail in the podcast, which I've linked below. That's my short answer. I know it wasn't really a short answer, but that's the short answer for now. Now the next question that I answer is one that I feel is very, very important, and it comes from this experience that I had with a friend who stayed with me a couple of years ago. So let me find a spot and we will answer that question in 3. Okay, so this next one is a multi-part question by Julie. Hey Julie, thanks for always commenting. Now, the first part is, do I know anyone who is retired to Japan? No, but I've been trying to work on meeting some people. I'm trying to build my network. If I meet anyone, I will definitely let you know. What do you recommend to increase my chances to meet and talk to people? This is huge. I have seen people who come to Japan, go to work, go home, go to work, go home, Skype and video games, never leave the house, and after 6-8 months they leave the country and they are very unhappy that they even came here. They do not have a good experience. I will do an entire video on this. I need to do an entire video on this. My number one advice is get out. Get out, get out, get out. Go out and do stuff. If you are jet lagged, go out and do something. If you are tired, go out and do something. If it is too cold out, go out and do something. There is a multitude of things to do. There are a range of cultural activities. There are any number of events, okay? There are social meetups and gatherings. There are business networking events. There are festivals. There are parties. There is... If you just Google the words things to do in Tokyo, you will come up with this whole list of festivals and events. A great site for that is Time Out Tokyo. Another great site for that is Tokyo Cheapo. I love those guys. They always come up with very interesting content. I will at some point list all the best sites for things to do and ways to find things to do. But for now, my number one thing, if you want to meet people, if you want to make friends, go out and do stuff. Pick friendly areas, young areas, or a little bit older areas. If you're a drinker, go out, go to a bar. In fact, I was shooting a video last night and we hit up a couple bars, and the number of people that we met was just phenomenal. Just made a ton of friends. That one's coming up on Tokyo Tuesday, by the way. If you are not a drinker, definitely get involved in some kind of social club or activity. Try karate, try judo, try kendo, something like that, okay? Just go out and do stuff. Go out and do stuff every day, because the second that you stop, the second that you take a break, then you take 2 breaks, then you take 3 breaks, and then before you know, a week's gone by, a month's gone by, and your time in Japan has gone by. When you first get to Japan, you're gonna feel like you have all the time in the world. And then you don't. Then you wake up one day and you realize, I have 2 months left on my visa. I should have done more. Don't be that person. Go out and do stuff. So I guess that's pretty much the Japan Q&A for this week. As always, very important part, if you have any questions for me at all, please leave them in the comments below. You guys know I love interacting with you. I can't wait to see what you guys ask this time. Let's get a little creative. If you have not already, hit that like button. If you're not subscribed already, don't forget to do that. Let me see you guys in the next video. Bye guys.